welcome back Year 9 to your second lesson on coral reefs within the living world topic. Your title for today's lesson is Why are coral reefs important and why are they under threat? So we will start today's lesson with a little bit of recap from last lesson, looking at what coral reefs are and where they are located. And then we'll move on to have a look at why they're important to humans and why they're important to the environment and why they're under threat. Okay, so last lesson you should have added these words to your glossary. If you haven't got these in your glossary, please could you add them now? Okay, a little bit of recap. So what actually is a coral reef? We spoke last lesson about the fact that corals are small animals called polyps, very, very similar to jellyfish. So these polyps release calcium carbonate, and that forms the shell that we see and notice as coral. This skeleton, this mineral skeleton of calcium carbonate, is coated with algae. So photosynthesizing algae, which give the coral its colour. The coral provides support and a stable environment for the algae to live, and the algae provide oxygen and food for the coral. Where can they be found? So coral reefs are found within the tropical zone, so within the area 30 degrees north and south of the equator. And what conditions do corals need in order to live and thrive? So we spoke last lesson about the fact that they need warm or hot water, so nothing less than 18 degrees C, ideally between 23 and 29 degrees C. They can cope with temperatures up to 40 degrees C, but not for extremely long periods of time. They grow on continental shelves or in shallow seas around land masses. Shallow water that's quite clear and very, very low levels of sediment in order for the sunlight to be able to percolate through and so that the algae can photosynthesize and the corals can get their oxygen and food. And we spoke last lesson about the different types of reef. So the fact that we can get fringing reefs, barrier reefs and atolls. Fringing reefs are the most common type of reef. When the sea level rises, fringing reefs turn into barrier reefs. Barrier reefs are just fringing reefs under deeper levels of water. And atolls are circular or almost rounded, joined up shapes of coral that form usually around volcanoes, and then the volcano subducts. And then we're just left with a ring of coral in the sea after that volcano is subducted underneath the water. And why are coral reefs important? There's several reasons for this, but before we discuss them, I want you to pause the video here for about 30 seconds to a minute and think to yourself, how many reasons can you come up with? Why are coral reefs important to humans and why are they important to the environment? So press pause and press play again afterwards. Okay, fantastic. So hopefully you've managed to think of a few reasons for why you think coral reefs are important. So let's speak about a few of those reasons now. The first reason is to do with food and fishing. So fish and shellfish living in coral reefs feed over 1 billion people, and it's mainly people living in poorer countries or LICs. They're an important breeding ground for commercial fishing. The second reason is to do with sourcing medicines. So in the same way that we source many medicines from the tropical rainforest, because coral reefs are so biodiverse, because there's such a wide range of species living there, we can also get a lot of medicines from coral reef ecosystems as well. Chemicals from coral reef organisms are used in scientific research to treat diseases including cancer. The third reason is to do with coastal protection measures or flood defences. So corals form natural barriers to storms and tsunamis, and they protect coastal communities. The fourth reason is to do with tourism and income from tourism. Millions of people are attracted to coral reefs, bringing huge economic benefits, particularly to poorer countries or LICs, because that's that tends to be where coral reefs are located. And the final reason is to do with ecology. So coral reefs are home to 25% of all marine species, including 4,000 species of fish and 700 species of coral. So what I want you to do now is to draw a table in your book or your paper. So a table that looks like the table in blue just at the bottom of this screen. And your first task is to read through the information cards. These are also on Satchel 1. You might be able to just pause the video and read them from the screen, or you might want to open up the information sheet on Satchel 1 and put each statement into one side of the table. You might think that some of the statements fit into both. In that case, just put the statement in the column that you think that it fits into the best, and then just put a star next to it so you know that it fits into both. Your stretch activity is to number the statements from 1 to 9, 1 being the most important and 9 being the least important. So there's 12 statements altogether. If you want to, you can do it with all 12, or you might just want to do it from 1 to 9 because that's still thinking about a lot of ideas. Pause the video here and press play when you've done that. And why are coral reefs under threat? So in the same way as the last question, can you think about any ways that you think they are under threat? So under threat from human activity mainly, or under threat from a changing environment? So pause the video here for about 30 seconds to a minute and see what you can think of. Press play when you've done that. Okay, a little bit of a clue about one of the main reasons why coral reefs are under threat. A fever in our oceans. What could that mean, and how does that relate to damage on coral reefs? Okay, so let's speak about a few of the reasons for why coral reefs are under threat. So coral reefs are affected by issues that happen locally, nationally, in the wider country, and globally as well. So the first reason is to do with agricultural chemicals and sediment discharged by rivers. So any pollution or sediment that ends up in watercourses which then enter the ocean close by to a coral reef can damage the reef directly or by blocking sunlight from infiltrating down in order for the algae to photosynthesize effectively. And if the sunlight is blocked, that means that the coral can't get enough food or oxygen, and they end up slowly dying or becoming extremely damaged. The second reason is to do with fishing nets. So fishing nets that scrape the bottom of the sea, or overfishing as well. The third reason is to do with tourists. So when tourists visit an area with coral reefs, they might want to purchase some coral to take home. This happens less and less nowadays, but it does still happen. And if this happens on a large scale, or if this is happening all the time, soon enough a significant amount of coral can be taken away from a certain area of the reef or an area that's easily accessible. The fourth reason is to do with ship anchors. So as we can imagine, a giant metal anchor scraping along the seabed can do an incredible amount of damage. And finally, the issue of coral bleaching, which is caused by the oceans progressively having become warmer over the past, well, quite a few decades due to global warming. So as atmospheric temperatures rise, the temperature of the sea also rises. There's a little bit of a delay in that. The sea warms slightly slower than the atmosphere. But warmer seas lead to the coral not being able to create their shells as effectively. They can't take in enough calcium carbonate to build their shell. And because of that, they become sort of stressed and they reject the algae that's living on them. The algae give the coral its colour, and when the coral ejects the algae and the symbiotic relationship is damaged, it leads to the coral becoming white, and that's what's known as coral bleaching. So if that happens for long enough, sometimes those corals can't recover and they die and the reef dies and it's obviously permanently damaged. Okay, and your task based on this information, so this is your final task. Your task is to create a speech. Write a speech in no more than 100 words. Your speech needs to state why governments need to address the issues to save the world's oceans. So the issues that we've just spoken about. Think about local, national and global threats. For a little bit more of a stretch, or if you're wanting to put some extra information into that, which is fantastic, can you include specific details about a certain reef? So you might want to start by, well, you can look at any reef at all, but if you're struggling to choose one, why not try the Great Barrier Reef? So if you have a look on the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority's website, there's some really good information there on the threats to the Great Barrier Reef. It's a really studied area. So pause the video here whilst you do that and press play when you've finished. Okay, and finally, a little bit of reflection. So our title for today was Why Are Coral Reefs Important and Why Are They Under Threat? So what I want you to do is think about each, well, sentence starter in the box just in the middle of the screen and complete those sentences based on today's lesson. So I learnt, I still want to know, I felt, and my favourite part was. And your extension activity today is to look a little bit more into coral bleaching and something called ocean acidification. So your task, your extension task, is to create a flow chart to show the process of ocean acidification. There's 2 web links here, but they're also on Satchel 1 as well, and there's some information sheets for you to use also.